Bill, thanks for coming back on. I was listening to your conversation with Andy Scheckman and never realized that grew up a fighter and martial arts. And I mean, back then martial arts it wasn't even a thing when I was growing up. And I'll be actually 47 tomorrow.
Yeah, it was. I was not nowhere near as coordinated as it is now. Um, I'm going to say it probably started to take off. I don't know, call it 1980 thereabouts is where you started seeing fights in big venues.
Are you surprised with the evolution of it today? Because I was actually talking to a friend of mine who he's got a daughter that's in college, and I asked him. I said, "Do you wonder?" Wonder if these kids, like when I was growing up, people got in fights and whatnot, but there were no iPhones back then, and today
Right.
everything's recorded. He goes, "Yeah, the danger with it is now these young guys, a lot more of them have the jiu-jitsu background. It's more
Right.
popular."
Well, yeah. I mean, in a street situation, probably I don't know, 80% of the fights end up on the ground. So either you know how to fight on the ground or you're going to lose. Unless you knock somebody out right off the bat. But I mean, the natural evolution of fighting is to go to the ground.
Are you?
And we were talking beforehand. I didn't start training martial arts till I was done playing hockey. And hockey, I mean, I viewed it back then as legalized violence.
This episode is brought to you by Vaulted. Launched by McIlvaney Financial Group, with Vaulted, I literally just tap a button and I own physical gold stored in a professional vault. Vaulted is offering all of my listeners $50 of free gold when you click on my sign-up link. They have a tool called Vault Plan that allows you to passively add your gold position every month. Just activate it for 6 months and you will get $50 of free gold in your account. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to vaulted.blbvux.net/coffeeandamike. So you were already, so growing up, you learned the physicality and really, your progression. You go from that to martial arts and then, the horseback riding. Man, that made you physically and mentally, you correct me here, physically and mentally strong. That's a good little path good path for somebody to go on.
Yeah, it was a good path. And I do have to say, as far as riding a horse, and I rode, thousands, and I rode over 20,000 miles on one horse. And I can tell you, with as stupid as things have been over the last 15, 18 years, just getting on my horse and road riding. I was not a ring rider, but just, riding out was so calming. You're able to reflect. You're not sitting there on a phone or whatever. It's just, you're able to think, clear your mind. So, the horseback riding is good from a physical standpoint, but for me, it was super from a mental standpoint.
Are you still riding?
Unfortunately, no. My horse died. He colicked a couple years ago. I got another horse, and I don't know. It was a good horse, but we just didn't mesh. It was just, and this was a pretty well trained horse, but the horse was trained basically in a ring, and we didn't really fit together. So I haven't ridden probably in I guess about 9 months now, something like that.
How do you manage then? In the times that we're in, how is your stress level? Seeing everything happening.
Well, obviously over time, I'm going to say my stress level was probably highest, I don't know, 2014 to 17, 18. And we got overwhelmed with fake news. And that was probably, for me, that was probably the worst, to see what I knew was obvious bullshit coming out, and you'd see every single network talking about it like whatever it was, like it was real. That I've always dug for the truth, and it has been stressful for me to see obvious to anyone with any type of critical thinking, uh, to see something that's obvious bullshit to be passed off and talked about and believed to be real. I mean, that's been the biggest stress for me.
And you feel it was higher then than it is today?
No, it's obviously higher today. It's higher now than it was, say, 10 years ago, but I think I'm better able to deal with it.
How do you deal with it, Bill?
I, I don't know. You just, you just, you just keep digging and you keep, proving to yourself. I mean, if you can look at something from 10 different angles and come up with the same answer, yet the out in public, the answer is 180 degrees from what you came to from 10 different angles, you just know that it's bullshit. And I've got to say that that's one of my God-given talents is that I do have a good nose for bullshit. I can look at something usually probably not even for more than 5 minutes and know that it's bullshit.
And the reason I ask that, I've gotten to a point where if people want to be blissfully unaware, they can be blissfully unaware. I think there's something major coming. Don't know when, don't know what hour, but it's inevitable. And
right.
I used to get really frustrated because I see people just blissfully unaware, man. They're going to Europe, they're going here. They tell me I'm nuts. They tell me I'm a doomer. I'm black pill, whatever, yada, yada, yada. And it used to really frustrate me that it's like, how are you not seeing this?
Well, yeah, I've thought for years and years how wonderful it would be to be ignorant of what's really happening. The only problem with that is when, when we get into that last final chapter, either you're in the right position or you're not in the right position. And if you're not, that's the rest of your life, however long it's going to be, that you're going to be behind the eight ball. So, while we have this status quo, yeah, it would be nice to be ignorant and stick your head in the sand and have no worries. But that's not going to work once this thing snaps, and it's going to snap.
Yeah, I think to me, one of the turning points was after the election, which I'm not going to lie. I mean, watching the liberals melt down, I did enjoy that for the night with all the DEI and the LGBTQ. And I lost, I'm a big yoga guy, so I lost a lot of friends.
That's all bullshit. All of that is bullshit. I mean, end of story.
I have a friend he'll say to me, he's like, I get it, the financial stuff. And then I'll see him talking about pride and love is love. I'm like, you don't get it. You just don't get it. You don't get anything if you're still talking about this stuff.
Right.
But after the election, after that night, I told people are like, we're winning. I mean, Bill, people literally are like, we're winning. The people rose and stood up. And I'm like, there's nothing to celebrate here. That's how I felt.
Right. And even to this point, can you definitively say that Trump is not a Trojan horse?
It was Andy Schectman in his conversation with Francis Hunt, which at first I was like, this makes a lot of sense. Is this the Great Reset? Is this what the tech people that got behind him? They just took over MAGA this time around?
We'll see. I mean, I don't know. Let's talk about the big, beautiful bill. It's going to add $22 trillion over 10 years. So what you're saying is the system can't survive unless we have a deficit of $2.2 trillion per year. It can't stand on its own. The financial system, the real economy.
When I hear this big, beautiful bill, I think, is this the Inflation Reduction Act? But it's just called something else now? Because remember the Inflation Reduction Act was going to bring down inflation, but yet you're increasing spending?
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. And we'll see whether and how it gets passed. But as I've said all along, this is a mathematical equation that can't be fixed. I mean, the debt in no possible way can it be paid off in current dollars. There's just not a possible way to do it. When I say current dollars, I'm talking about the value of current dollars. We're going to have to go through a massive devaluation. And the flip side of massive devaluation is hyperinflation. That's what it means.
And that's what's happening now. And okay, so what do you envision then? What are they attempting to do with devaluing the dollar and then tariffs? But although the tariffs are getting blocked right now by the court system, so
they're trying to make the debt payable, and I mean, you still couldn't make the debt payable with the dollar sitting at 50% of current purchasing power.
So now that the tariffs are blocked for now, what do you expect them to do next?
Who knows? I mean, really, who knows? There's been so many things you just sit back and watch, and you're like, "Wow, I didn't see that coming," or that was you just. And let's use Trump as an example. So, just out of the blue, he starts calling, Putin a crazy man. I mean, that's not the way to negotiate.
Yeah, and
who saw that coming?
And you'll have the loyal, so say it's 5D chess, 4D, whatever that is.
Right. Yeah, and they probably used to listen to Q also. How'd that work out?
Bill, I still have people tell me this is all part of the plan.
Yeah, trust the plan. Okay.
What you and I talked before the election, we talked shortly after the election. As now we're over 100 days into this administration with Scott Besson and Howard Lutnick, what are your thoughts?
One of my biggest concerns is the laws that they want to put in place regarding anti-Semitism. I mean, I'm not pro anti-Semitism. What I am pro is pro First Amendment, and people should be able to say whatever they want to say. They can't be violent. You can't see violence, but people should be able to protest. Look at these. The problem at these colleges, they protest and they shut a library down, so a regular student can't go in and actually study in the library. They can't get in, they can't get out. They're blocking passage. That's wrong. But they certainly have the right to say, I'm pro-Hamas, I'm pro-Israeli, whatever. But, when there's violence, then there's laws that cover that. And the existing laws, they don't need new laws. They just need to enforce what's currently on the books.
Yeah, and this is what the concern with all this is, once it starts, they just expand it out.
Right. Yeah, well, perfect example of that. Look at the Patriot Act that came out right after 9/11, which was written prior to 9/11. So I guess somebody had knowledge that this was going to be needed. But look what's happened with the Patriot Act and how that is for time.
And once they put these measures into place, they never relinquish it. I mean,
they never go back.
No,
they never go back. It's like taxation. I forget what year it was. It was the very, very early 1900s. We had a quote. They called it a temporary tax, and it's permanent. Just like when we went off the gold standard in 1971, that was temporary, but no, it wasn't.
Well, and now you have the Real ID, which I actually have to fly next week, and I have to take my passport, which the intention for the passport was for international, but now you have to use it for domestic.
Right.
But nobody. This is the problem. People embrace this stuff, but it's inevitable. I mean, you can't. At this point, you can't stop it.
Yeah, people. Well, and people embrace it because oh, somebody's got to save us, and that's how they're going to push the CBDC onto the population. They'll tank the markets. You'll see the great taking in place where people are just outright losing their assets to institutions that go down. And then you'll have people begging, save us. And the save us is going to be CBDC, which obviously creates more of a problem because then even the bubble gum, the bubble gum that you buy, even that's tracked. So, I mean, it's a tracking system is what it is.
How far off do you think we are from that, Bill?
We are a market crash off from that. Whenever the market crashes, that will be instituted pretty quickly.
You think the technology's there now to put it full in to effect?
It's pretty darn close. I mean, if it's not already there, it's really close.
Yeah, I think the foundation's there. I mean, everybody, when you literally walk around, everybody's glued to their phones, right? You go into a store and people are just sucked in by the screen. And the young people, I mean, I watched them pull out their phones crossing the street.
Mike, back in, I think it was 2018, I want to say, went to a restaurant, and right next to us, there was a table of 4, probably college students, early 20s. They all sat down. All 4 of them had their phones. They're all on their phones, all 4 of them. And this one girl, and I wrote an article about this, you could still probably pull it up on the internet, why you shouldn't wear a nose ring. This girl, it was an Italian place, and she's sitting there and she's got a piece of cheese hanging down from her nose ring. Not one, and she had it there the whole meal. Not one person looked up. Not one person looked at her to tell her, you got cheese hanging off your nose ring, and she walked out of the restaurant with it. It was unbelievable. And my point was society / technology had gotten at that point, and that's 7 years ago, had gotten so retarded that human interaction was technology was ruining human interaction.
And that was in 2018. So then you had COVID onto that, which made it even worse.
Correct.
And now people are so dependent on their electronic devices, and they get more satisfaction. The younger people, not all of them, but the younger people get more satisfaction from posting, especially the girls, posting pictures on the internet and videos than in real world, in front of people.
Right. Hey, I got one thing to say, because you're not nearly as old as me, but all I could say is I thank the Lord there were not cell phones and video cameras when I was a kid.
I feel for them, how much harder it is to grow up through all this. Well, yeah, I mean, but because you do dumb things when you're 18, 19 years old.
Exactly, but you don't want them filmed. You don't want to see them when you're 50.
I only had my ATM receipt to go off of and how much money was left in my wallet when I woke up on Saturday mornings.
There you go.
Do you you were on your website, which I encourage everybody to go to, you were talking about Trump Media, how they're investing $2.5 billion into crypto.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I mean, let's back up a second, because the the meme coins that rolled out right before the inauguration, and again, the MAGA loyalists were like, "Oh, this is great. This is great."
Well, I think and I've said this all along, when all is said and done, I think people are going to find out that crypto is nothing but digital air. It's not an asset. It's a perfect accounting of, if you want to call it, digital mining, but of, what's the benefit? It's not an asset.
What were your thoughts when you read that the Trump media company invested all that money into it, or they're raising money?
My thought process was Trump is in the process of forgetting his roots. His father and grandfather were big supporters of the John Birch Society. If you recall, the John Birch Society was jumping up and down when Roosevelt basically took us off the, confiscated gold from citizens, and they were jumping up and down about Bretton Woods. It just, to me, it's like Trump has forgotten his roots or forgotten his family's roots, because they were, I think, late 1800s, early 1900s, they were somehow involved in mining operations. They obviously understood money, and we'll see. I mean, you got people that say, yeah, Bill Holter's right. You got other people saying, yeah, Bill Holter's a complete idiot regarding crypto. But I think when all is said and done, people are going to find out that they put their money into a black hole that is literally worthless, valueless. And it was disappointing to me because I always believed that Trump was a hard money guy, and crypto is not hard money in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I've had Bitcoin people on here, and I've two questions that I've brought up. I still really understand the responses, but one, the first question is, if there's only a finite amount of Bitcoin, right, whatever that number is,
right,
and people, let's say, people die, logins, access gets lost. What happens to all that? What happens to all that Bitcoin? So it's going to get smaller every single year because they don't add more.
Right.
So there's that aspect. The other aspect is it's all about decentralization, right? That's what they say. Bitcoin is decentralized. But
yeah, there have been so many arguments along the way. Like, think back, what was it, 6-7 years ago? Oh, Bitcoin is totally anonymous. You're able to do what you want, and the government can't track you, blah, blah, blah. Well, each one of these arguments have fallen, not even, I'm going to say 5 or 6 years ago, Bitcoin was going to become the new payment system. None of this has worked out. It all turned out to be wrong. And then they just go on to something new.
Well, and also with that is, if the government wants to come in and centralize it, and I had somebody bring up the example, I've told this I had Paul Craig Roberts on yesterday, and we were talking about this. I said, what about, if you remember Napster with the music industry, and it changed everything, but they eventually figured it out, and Apple and Spotify were able to come in and, take it back from Napster and LimeWire and all the pirate websites. So why couldn't the government do that now if they want to centralize it and take it away from?
Yeah, I mean, it could be done in many different manners. I mean, there's so many different ways that they could do that.
They could just incentivize people to use their platform, and they'll pay you. That's all they would need to do.
Or raise a special tax on crypto. And I believe they will probably do that with gold and silver, that they'll raise the tax rate, the capital gain tax rates on gold and silver. They obviously could do that. But if you look at a system that's crashed and everything's worth nothing, your gold and silver that do not default and still have value. So you got to pay a 50% or 70% or whatever the number happens to be tax on it. It's still better than nothing. You still have something, in other words.
Do you see a slow deterioration as we sit here end of May, or are things going to accelerate?
Well, obviously things are going to accelerate at some point, and I think the Achilles heel, and I've talked about this for years and years, the Achilles heel is that this system is built upon credit as opposed to a a hard foundation of real money. And I mean, look at interest rates all over the world. Rates are rising. Just look at the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve itself. They are technically insolvent. They have a negative net worth because the bonds they hold have dropped so much in value. It's wiped out their equity position. I think their actual net worth is worse than negative $150 billion now.
Yeah, and you look at all the way down to the consumer, the buy now, pay later, which I mean, thank God for this show because I'm learning about this. People are buy now, pay later for Grubhub.
Right. Yeah, they're eating off of buy now and pay later. What could possibly go wrong?
I just saw a commercial with Will Ferrell about PayPal. You can do installments via PayPal, which that's the same thing, right? Is buy now, pay later.
Yes. Yeah. It all goes back to, I'm going to say that episode of Popeye came out in the 1930s with Wimpy. I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today.
And this is what shows, I mean, the real decay of our society and the deterioration. And and I think you've said this before. I mean, these institutions cannot be salvaged at this point.
No, they're upside down.
And people thought Elon Musk was going to save everything, Bill. They thought Doge was going to be the white knight and everything.
Yeah, I've talked about that. One of the unintended consequences, which we're not seeing yet because the cuts have not actually been made because they're being held up in courts. But let's say the Doge really could find $1 trillion or $2 trillion where they could shut it off. Shut that off, and you're shutting the money off to the Ponzi scheme. I mean, this whole thing has been floated on free money. And let me backtrack just a little bit. Go back to whenever it was, late 2008, early 2009, where the Fed actually advanced over $16 trillion all over the world, not just to the U.S. banks, institutions, but all over the world. And I think a little more than half went outside of the U.S. What was that based on? And we didn't find out about that until 2010 or 2011, way after the fact. But where did that 16 trillion come from? And this time around, if it needed 16 trillion back then, what do we need now? 50 trillion? 80 trillion, 100 trillion? I mean, who knows what the number is? And how does an institution with a negative 150 plus $1 billion negative net worth, how do they come up with 25, 30, 50, 100 trillion dollars? You know, where's it come from? I mean, it's all fictional.
What is that why Russia, China, and some of the other BRICS countries are recognizing that the dollar is not the not the future any longer?
That is exactly why there is a BRICS union. The BRICS union has come about purely because foreign nations were tired of the U.S. boot on their throat with the SWIFT system, the U.S. hegemon, and they understand that if you and I understand that the debt's not payable, there's a lot smarter people all over the world than you and I that understand the debt is not payable in current value, current values, current dollar values. So, I mean, they fully understand this, and that's why they're trying to put a system in place that avoids using the dollar.
Plus the fact that the United States will confiscate your billions of dollars if you, do something they don't like via Russia.
They did it with Russia, exactly. And look at the chart of gold. Gold started going up what day? The day after the 300 billion of Russian reserves were sequestered. You just go look at a chart. It was October of 22.
How do you just confiscate a country's? How do you just confiscate a country's $300 billion in dollars and just take it from them and think there's not going to be any type of, consequence for that?
Well, they just did it. They just did it. They said, we make the rules, and that's fine. I mean, they were able to do that, but now there's repercussions to that, and the repercussions are foreign nations don't want to use the dollars that they were using in the past because now you've scared the entire world.
How long, in your view, will it take for these countries to have the full system in place where they're not relying on the dollar anymore? And then when would the dollar lose its reserve currency status?
Well, the dollar already is losing its reserve currency status because you see nations trying to trade without dollars. You're seeing there's a lot of cross trade, like between Russia and China. They use yuan, they use rubles, and they don't use dollars. There is the BRICS meeting coming up on July 6th. I think it's a 3 or 4 day meeting. I'm really interested to see what the communique is after that, because we're getting closer and closer to the flashpoint, and who knows, maybe that is the flashpoint. Maybe they come out with something and they say, we're flipping the switch on this thing's going to be born and come live.
It's an incredible time to be alive right now, isn't it? Discussing all this.
Yeah, and I've thought back. I mean, there's so many soldiers that we've stood with over time that have passed away that understood hard money, and I just feel that it's unfortunate that they didn't get to see it, for their own eyes, that they were right all along.
When did you start realizing that this whole thing was coming down?
Well, my very first class, the very first book I opened in college in 1978, it was a Keynesian book. At the bottom of the first page, top of the second page, it said, "We don't know why the Great Depression happened, but we do know it can never happen again." And that is what set me off digging. And I early on figured out that it was too much credit. It was too much credit for the, during the Great Depression. And then you saw the debt build up or begin to build during Reagan's years. And you had, Pete Peterson, the Peterson Foundation was saying basically because of the hockey stick that 1995 or thereabouts was the point of no return. And I basically went all in on gold in 97 when gold dropped to 335, and that was the cost of production. And I knew, I'm a value investor, I knew that if you could buy something at or below the cost of production, sooner or later, you're going to get paid. It may not be immediate. You may have to wait some time. But if you could buy something below the cost of production or like a real piece of real estate, the cost to rebuild something, sooner or later, you're going to get paid.
You recognize real estate, and that's what led you to Texas, because the real estate market had crashed, and
Right.
You saw the opportunity there. Where do you see in the United States real estate going from residential and commercial?
In dollar terms, you may not see. It depends on the timing of the devaluation of the dollar. So you may not see real estate really collapse in dollar terms. But in terms of gold ounces, in terms of silver ounces, in terms of a fixed monetary unit, the prices are going to absolutely outright collapse. I mean, just drive through any city. You'll see construction all over the place, and everything that's built and everything that's being built is being done on credit. The whole thing is done on credit. And when credit collapses, who's going to be able to step up and buy whatever you have that you're looking to sell? It's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's amazing. You look at, even the price of cars, how it's absolutely skyrocketed, but yet the quality of them, they're shit in compared to what they used to build. But yet, You're not under attack, Bill. You're not under attack right now, are you? Your dog's watching your back.
No, those would have been different barks.
But the price of cars should have come down. They shouldn't be costing what they are today.
Well, yes and no. I mean, think about it. Um, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. I mean, yeah, there were some pretty cool cars back then. I mean, the muscle cars, which the end of that was 1972, but there was zero technology. And I mean, the technology today is, so far beyond. So you've got to look at, not just first off, you got to look at dollars. The dollar itself has been vastly devalued. Then you look at the technology that's in a car today. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of technology. I mean, when I was growing up, when I was in high school or college, I couldn't imagine a front or a back camera. I couldn't imagine a GPS system. Uh, I mean, only the fanciest cars in the late 60s, early 70s even had power windows. So the cars, the cars themselves, they're better. Um, I'm not saying they're better in a crash. I'm not saying that they'll last longer, but they're better from a creature comfort standpoint. And then again, as I just mentioned, the value of the dollar has crashed. So it is possible that if when you add the two together, you add the dollar devaluation plus the amount of technology that's added into cars now, you may be getting a better deal. It's hard to say. I mean, I'd have to see some numbers crunched in order to come up with, definitive.
I know I'm running out of time here with you, but I do want to ask you, your thoughts on AI and where it's at today, and what are your thoughts on it?
I'm obviously not a tech genius, but the scary thing is, just a couple days ago, we heard that there was an AI system that refused to shut down and then began rewriting its own code. And you've got some pretty smart people. You have some people that have been, in the tech industry their entire lives that are saying, AI is probably going to wipe out the human race. So I, I just, I believe that it is a very big potential problem. It's scary.
Yeah, and how fast it's evolving. And it depends on who you ask, but I think there's definitely it seems like it's evolving very, very quickly right now. So, Bill,
Everything is. Everything is moving. If you think about it, Mike, pretty much anything and everything you look at, you do, your world, your life, everything is speeding up. Everything, whether it be technology, whether it be finance, whether it be uh, just everything in your life is much faster now than it was 20 years ago, 40 years ago. I mean, go back 100 years and, what was the new invention? The radio. I mean, there's just, technology, the advances are coming faster and faster and faster.
and isn't it amazing how it's evolving so quickly, but yet everything you do is a hassle today.
Well, that
Every,
could be everything we do being a hassle could be the fact that we're getting older.
oh,
I don't know. You just have to deal with it.
Flying's a pain. Renewing your drive, everything's a process, and you can't deal with any. It's less and less likely you can deal with a real person when you make a phone call for like from a customer service standpoint, or somebody that doesn't even live in this country.
True. But then again, on the flip side of that, I'll tell you a brief story about Costa Rica. Renewing your driver's license there is hilarious. And this was what, 12, 15 years ago. I walked into the motor vehicles place, and they had about 100 chairs lined up 25 in 4 rows. And you go in and you take a number, and they got this electronic thing up that shows the number. Well, all the people are sitting next to each other on these rows, and the back row was empty. And I went in, I pulled my ticket, and I just went sat down in the back. Well, everybody turned around and looked at me, and then the next person came in and they sat down in line, and the guy said, "No, you have to move back one because that seat was mine." So every time the number would change, people would start yelling at me, tell me I'm not sitting in the right place because I got to sit there. And they would all get up when the number came up and the first guy in line went up. Everybody would get up and move one seat over, which, I mean, that's old school. I mean, that's like 1940s, 1950s thought process. So, you know, you can balance stupidity off with, you know, where we are now.
Where do you think we are a year from now, Bill? Last question. Where do you think things sit?
A year from now, I think we will be into the great taking.
It's not that far away.
No, it's not. Which means there's going to be a lot of events. You know, if I'm right, there's going to be an incredible amount of events that we get flooded with, and all kinds of pitfalls, potholes, obstacles that you're going to have to avoid, you know, to still be standing, to still be surviving, and still have your wealth.
What is your biggest concern of all this? We talked about Russia. We've talked about devaluing the dollar, First Amendment. What's at the top of your list?
I got to say war. War is, you know, war will be the worst.
Which usually is what follows when you're talking about a collapse of the financial system, right?
Right, exactly.
So
and it wouldn't surprise me if they happened hand in hand.
Do you think it Russia, Ukraine, that escalates, Middle East, or all of it?
That's hard to say, but I'll answer your question with a question. What do you think would happen to the lifestyle / finances of the United States if a carrier got taken out? What happens then?
I think the country would rally to go to war.
Yeah, but now you're talking about an all-out war, and something that was previously thought to be 100% invincible is not 100% invincible.
It's yeah. And people, you know, they say, I look at all this, it is what it is, right, to where we're at. And what else can we do, right? We work within our local community and financially prepare ourselves the best way we can.
You just said it. Do the best you can. That's all you can do.
Where can people find you, Bill?
Just go to my website, billholter.com, and there is a contact button there if you do want to contact me directly with questions, or you want to do precious metals business. My business email is bholter@proton.me.
Bill, I always enjoy our conversations. Look forward to the next one. I always appreciate you making yourself available, and look forward to continuing to follow your work.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Mic drop.